Standing desks started to gain popularity a few years ago, and if you look at the Google Trends graph, you can see that interest has been rising pretty steadily for the last few years. With the increase of people working from home and the health and focus benefits that you get, it's easy to see why. But how does it actually improve your health and focus? In this video, I'm going to do my best to answer that question and share with you my experience using this desk and some tips and tricks for getting the most out of a standing desk experience. Firstly, what is actually wrong with sitting at a desk? Well, not a lot. There's nothing wrong with sitting at a desk in the same way there's nothing wrong with a glass of orange juice. If you drink a glass of orange juice, it's fine, there's nothing wrong with it. If anything, it's actually quite good for you. The problem is, if all you drink is orange juice and you're just necking back gallons of orange juice, it's going to destroy your teeth, it's going to destroy your kidneys, it's not going to be good for you. The problem isn't actually with sitting at the desk, it's just with sitting at the desk every single day, all day, for 50 years of your life. That's the problem, and that's what we're trying to stop. But the problem is that for hundreds of millions of people around the world, that is just the reality. You have a job that you have to do, and that requires sitting at a desk, and not everyone has a job which is away from a desk. But if you are able to have the flexibility to do something like get a standing desk, well, then this video is for you. Ultimately, sitting for long periods of time can lead to back pain, poor concentration, and terrible circulation. I mean, we've all experienced a little bit of numb bum, haven't we? Some more than most. So it's not a surprise that standing desks are on the rise. Get it? Rise. But the actual science behind standing desks is actually quite varied, and there are drawbacks to standing all day in the same way that there are some drawbacks to sitting all day. Now, there actually are a few reasons why standing all day is actually quite bad. Similar to sitting all day, it can create pain and strain in your feet and legs. It can also lead to poor circulation. And ultimately, for people looking at going for a standing desk, the idea of switching sitting 8 hours a day to standing 8 hours a day is quite daunting and is going to be incredibly difficult to do. You can't just switch from one to the other, expect it to be easy and it to transform your life. It's going to be hell. And actually, the real thing that's going to benefit you isn't going to be standing all day, and it certainly isn't going to be sitting all day. It's going to be having a variation of both and making sure you're moving around. Now, I'm not suggesting that you literally spend your entire time walking. Obviously, that isn't going to necessarily be the best solution, and if you need to work, you need to be at your desk. But something like an adjustable standing desk is going to be a solution that would work. You can get manual ones that you have to sort of lift and lock in place, or you can get motorized ones. And this desk behind me here that was sent to me via Maidesite is a motorized standing desk. This is the Maidesite S2 Pro Plus, and it actually solves quite a lot of the problems that I've laid out in this video so far. Firstly, it is a motorized standing desk. It comes in a variety of color combinations from the desk to the legs, and those two things are essentially the two main components. Ultimately, the desktop is just that. It's a desktop. It's not really anything special about this one in particular, other than the fact that it does look amazing and it feels very, very high quality. But the real action is to be had in the legs. Now, just be aware, if you do get one of these, do be aware that it is very heavy, and the boxes that it all comes in are ridiculous. Now, as much as this desk might have not skipped leg day, I certainly have, so just be careful if you're doing that. You don't want to throw your back out and negate all of the benefits that you're going to get from having this standing desk. Now, you do have to build the desk yourself and put it all together. It's fairly simple to do, and the instructions are fairly clear, so you can just walk through those and get it done. It's not a massive challenge, but you do actually have to read it and make sure you're using the right screws, because I didn't read it properly and I didn't use the right screws, and then I had to sort of undo all of the work I'd just done, and it took me longer than it needed to. So just make sure, if you are doing it, unlike me, just actually read it. Now, essentially, you have two motorized legs that are going to be doing all of the lifting, and this one being the S2 Pro Plus, it is a 3-pillar system. That essentially means that the legs can lift the desk higher, it can do it faster, and it's more stable. Now, the main problem that this desk solves is the fact that it can be a standing desk and a sitting desk and everything in between. And ultimately the quality of this desk from Maidesite just shines through. It's just incredibly strong and sturdy and wobble resistant. And that's because of things like the adjustable legs on it. It's got sloped edges and arches underneath in the supports, so it is just really strong and stable. The transitions as it moves up and down are super smooth and fairly quiet, and this thing is really strong. I mean, it can even lift me, and I weigh about 220 pounds, and then it can do some more on top of that too. And there are also just some nice touches, like this little cutout on the desk so you can feed wires through and keep your cable management nice and tidy. And then there are also cable management clips that come with it that you can stick to the bottom of the desk and keep all of your cables running through, looking neat and tidy, not have things dangling below. Now, if you are going to be using a standing desk and you have the option to have one that is either sitting or standing, I do recommend that you switch between the two throughout the day. Now, this variation is a lot better for you than just doing one or the other, because you're giving yourself breaks, it's easier to transition into, and also it actually incites a bit of movement. And if you can break it up as well by doing an actual bit of moving in between, then obviously that's going to be good for you too. Now, we are met with some other problems that are sort of caused by ourselves and our brains. One of those problems is the fact that remembering to go between switching and standing isn't necessarily that natural. Once you're down and you're sort of in the zone and you're focused on your work, you might find that you just forget to stand up. And ultimately, if you do that, that just negates the whole point of having a standing desk. The thing to remember is that this is a discipline. It's not going to just be one of those things that because you have this desk, you're suddenly going to be healthy. But there are things you can do to make your life a bit easier. Now, this desk actually does hold another solution to that, and in order to sort of work out what that is, we'll have to have a look at the control panel. So on the control panel, we actually have our obvious things like the up and down controls. There's an LED display to show your current height settings, and then there are some preset buttons where you can set 4 different preset heights. So what would make sense would be to have a seated option, a standing option. If there are other people that use the desk, they can have their own standing options. You could also have a low option, maybe if a child's using the desk and they have a smaller chair, so you can encourage them to be using the desk as well. Now, there is a USB port on the side of that, and we can use that to charge things like your phone. And the real key here is that there is a timer on that control panel, and you can set times for it to go off to remind you to switch between standing and sitting and sitting and standing. Essentially what you would do is you'd pick a time interval, and then when that time interval goes off, it will buzz and remind you to switch. Now, if you're new to a standing desk, I would recommend keeping that interval quite short, probably about half an hour. So essentially you would spend half an hour standing at the desk, and then after half an hour you can sit down for half an hour and keep working, and then vice versa. And then if you want to break that up with once an hour going to get yourself a drink or something like that, that would also be a good idea, because then it keeps you moving. And then just getting into that cycle of standing, sitting, walk around, standing, sitting, walk around, it just gets you into a good cycle. Now, as much as it doesn't seem like you're standing for a very long period of time, throughout an 8-hour working day, let's say, you're still standing for half the amount of time. It actually makes it a lot easier to do, but you're not having the sort of long standing sessions where you just feel like you're absolutely knackered and you can't even concentrate on your work. And if you've been doing it well, you might want to change the intervals. You might want to stand for an hour or a couple of hours, and then that's your personal preference really. I just keep it with that half an hour thing, and sometimes I don't necessarily use the timer. Maybe I'm having a bad day and I don't feel like standing that much, but what I do is that if I start feeling myself losing focus or getting a bit fidgety and getting easily distracted, I'll then switch to the other. So I'll then stand up for a bit, and then after however long I start feeling uncomfortable, starts distracting me from my work, I'll then sit down and just keep going between the two. With that, if you find yourself that you're spending a lot more time sitting than standing, then maybe it might be worth going back to the timer. But I do find that helps me focus a lot more, and just going from that change of standing to sitting completely resets my mind, and it makes it easier for me to keep focused on my work and feeling a little bit less worn out from whatever it is that I'm doing. Ultimately, all of these things are here just to help you become healthier and more mobile, and that is essentially what it's done for me. In my experience, I found this difficult to start with. The first day, it's easy to remember to do because it's a new thing and you're getting into a new routine. It's quite easy to remember to do it, but it's quite difficult and it hurts your legs. The second day, it's easier to forget, but it's still also quite hard on your legs and your feet and ankles. But as time goes on, you do build up a bit of strength. A little tip for you if you've been using a standing desk for a little while, what I found is that I was having quite a lot of pain in my feet and in my ankles, and ultimately that is because I just stand like a weirdo and my posture is not the best. So what I found is if I try and make my feet slightly more parallel than is comfortable, turn them in slightly, my body will naturally pull them out and it will screw them into the ground, and it will just position me on top of my feet in a more comfortable way, and that tends to alleviate most of my foot and ankle pain. And it is a habit I had to build up. It didn't come naturally to me, I promise, but if you do build that up, it will help you. Now, another problem that you can sometimes get with a standing desk, and a tip for sorting that, is that if you sort of leave your desk in a sitting position, it's very easy to come in, sit down, start working, and just completely forget about the whole standing desk arrangement that you've got going on. If you need to set a timer, you still need to manually do that, and you need to decide to do that. So a little tip to help you keep in that sort of standing cycle is that when you're finished your day's work, make sure the desk, and as you leave it at the end of the day, is in a standing position. It just means that when you start work the next day, you'll start off with a standing desk, and then you will inevitably want to sit down, and then it will remind you, or be a natural reminder, to set your timers and to get yourself back into that sitting and standing cycle. Now, I haven't had a standing desk for years, but I have actually been using standing desks for a little while now, and I have found some actual improvements in my day-to-day life. I feel like my posture is better. I feel like I can stand and be on my feet for longer periods of time and need breaks less often. I also find that when I'm working, I am concentrating for longer periods of time, and these are sort of the obvious things that you'd expect over a short period of time. It will be interesting to see whether this affects my long-term health. Obviously, there's not really an easy way of me measuring that as I get older, because I don't know how bad I'm going to be, and honestly, my personal life, I am just a bit of a pig, so it's probably not going to make a huge amount of difference there, because I just love food. Greasy, disgustingly tasty food. Yeah. Guys, I hope you enjoyed the video and it was helpful. To support the channel, please just like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.